Okay, we're going to take a look at simplifying radical expressions. Done it before. This is Algebra 1 stuff, but we're going to go back over it again, take a look at it. So, basically what we're going to do here is this idea of nth roots. This is something that you need to make sure that you get copied down. Now it says, given that a and b are real numbers, a to the n is equal to b. Then we say that a is an nth root of b. For example, 3 squared is 9. So 3 is a root of 9. 2 to the third power is 8. So 2 is a root of 8. It's this idea that we're going to be working with. Now, a few more details that you need here. If I take a look at this here, it says that I got the nth root of b. N is the index. Everybody always looks at that sign and say, oh, that's a square root symbol. It's just a root symbol. If you do not see a number, we assume that it's a square root. That's the default on it. Okay? But that'll tell you what the index is. And I'll explain that in a second. Here we go. So, I want the fifth root of negative 32. In other words, what I'm doing is I'm asking the question, x to the fifth power is equal to a negative 32. Okay? Or, if you like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 numbers multiplied together equal 52. Now, would that have to be a fairly small number? If you think about it? One of the things you should always kind of keep in mind is if it's an even number, start off with 2. So what's 2 times 2? What's 2 times 2? 4. Times 2 times 2 times 2, 32. So that means in this instance that x is going to be equal to 32. Now, the other part of this is it's got to be a negative. Okay? So x is going to be equal to negative 2. That's just the way it is. So if I look at b, what's the third root of 27? In other words, what 3 numbers multiplied together equal 27 that are exactly the same? Well, 2 ain't going to work, is it? No. Not going to be anything even, so it's got to be something odd. Well, let's try 3. What's 3 times 3? 9. 9 times 3 is 27. So in this case, we would say that x is going to be equal to 3. Why? Because 3 to the third power is equal to 27. So the third root of 27 is equal to 3. What about c? 4. So 4 4s multiplied together equal 16. Yeah, 4 times 4 does, but that's not what it's asking. It's asking for x to the fourth power is equal to 16. In other words, 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, okay, have to get multiplied together to be equal to 16. Well, it turns out to be 2 again. Because 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So 2 to the fourth power gets us to 16. This is the thought process that you have to have. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at this one. What number is it going to be? Now, when you're going through and doing this, I've got this, I see who's there. Once you've got your answer, and I hit start activity, which I just did, now you will be allowed to go through and answer a question. Okay? So, give you a few moments here, work on that. Okay, put your values in and click enter and see what you got. Good. A few of you in, hurry up. See, this is one of these questions where actually having a graphing calculator or any calculator at all is just going to mess with you. Actually, takes more time to do that. Got it, ladies? You got to type in your answer and then press enter. Or up on the upper left, up on top there, it says, makes you go on to the next question. Okay, so 8, 0, 15, -4, and 5. Well, -5 was the correct answer. Good. And the reason is why. You have to remember that if this is saying that it is the third root of 125, in other words, x to the third power has to be equal to -125. In other words, there are three numbers that when I multiply them together, I get -125. Now, I said that that the calculator was probably going to get in your way more than it was anything else, simply because it's got to be a small number and it's got to end in a 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 25 gives me 125. Just that simple. So I'm going to give you a minute or so and I want you to solve this one. It's easy enough to go through and know what the square root of 9 is, right? Square root of 9 is just simply 3. But that negative is out in front, so that means the negative has to stay out in front here. So it's going to be -3. Okay? So, move on to the next one. Give you a moment, take care of the answer for this one. Here we go. Ooh. Okay. Now, whenever I'm doing this, I'm always asking a question. And the question is, how many numbers of this one kind of number multiply together to equal what's on the inside? So, how many numbers do I need to have? I gotta have 5 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, these numbers, when I multiply them together, what must they equal? They got to be equal to -1. So, if I'm going to get 1, what kind of a number, 1 times what equals 1? So these would all have to be 1s, but would that get me to my negative? No, so that means it's got to be a negative. And since I got 5 of them, that's odd, so it turns out to be -1. Okay? Now, here are a couple rules that you need to make sure that you have written down. Product rule and the types of real roots for the radicals. So I'll give you a few moments to get those down. All right, so let's take a look at how these are going to get used. Now, quite often, there are going to be multiple ways of attacking these problems. You don't have to do every single one exactly the same way. However, sometimes it makes it easier doing it in specific ways than others. So I'll do them and then we'll see what they come up with. Now for this one here, I got the square root of 8 times the square root of 5. Neither of those are perfect squares. So that means that if I multiply them, I get the square root of 40. Okay. Now, we've done this a little bit before. What I want are the prime factors of this or finding the perfect squares that are factors of this. Depends upon what is going on with it. So what I'd like you to do is use the factors. We've been doing that more often than not. So what are the factors of 40? Well, they are 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3 doesn't go into it, 4 and 10 goes into it, 5 goes into it, and I get 8. So I have all the possibilities there. Do I have a factor that is a perfect square? And hopefully by now you're starting to recognize exactly what the perfect squares are. 1 is always going to be a perfect square, but the next one is going to be 2. So we really don't count 1. We start with 2. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. Well, I see the 4 here. So what this means is that 40 is the same as the square root of 4 times 10, which is the same as the square root of 4 square root of 10, which is 2 square root 10. That's simplified down as far as it goes. Okay, now, this method works really well if you're looking for perfect squares. I'm not looking for perfect squares over here with 54. So with 54, and I'm looking for the third root, this is where having the prime factors works out the best. So we're going to do the upside down division for this thing. So what that looks like is, we'll start off here with 54. Lowest prime number is always 2. So is 54 divisible by 2? Okay. So 2 goes into 54 how many times? 27. Is 27 a prime number? The answer is no. Is 27 even? No. What's the next prime number after 2? 3. Is 27 divisible by 3? So 27 is divisible by 3 and I get 9. Well, 9 I know is divisible by 3 and I get 3. What we want to do is we want to look for where we have 3. Because I'm looking for a 3 here, so that means I want to have 3's here. Not the 3 3's, but 3 3's. Get that? I'm not worried about that there's 3's. I need 3 of something. So, how this gets rewritten is, well, 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. So 54 is going to be equal to the third root of 27 times 2, which is going to be third root of 27 multiplied by the third root of 2, which is, what's the third root of 27? 3, third root 2. Now, next one I got, 5, 6, 7. So, that one I can just look at the factors of it. Because we're just looking for square roots, so we can go for perfect squares. So I've got 5, 6, 7. Well, I know it's divisible by 1 and 5, 6, 7. It's not even, so it's not divisible by 2, is it? Is it divisible by 3? Well, if I add all these up, 5 and 6 gives me 11, 11 and 7 gives me 18, so yes, it will be divisible by 3. So what is 5, 6, 7 divided by 3? What do we get? 189. Okay, so we end up with 189. Well, we know it's not going to be divisible by any even numbers. So it's not going to be divisible by 4, 6, or 8, or anything else like that. It will be divisible by 9, though. So if I divide this by 9, we end up with 5, 6, 7 divided by 9, and I end up with 63. Now, because I look at 63 and I see that there, 63 I know is divisible by 7, correct? So I'm going to say, okay, divisible by 7. Sometimes when you're going through and doing this, you miss a number. 7, you just got to simply check it. So I got 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7 divided by 7, and I end up with 81. Okay, so 7 and 81. You know what? I'm going to stop right there. Because 81 is a perfect square, isn't it? 9 times 9. So, and 7 is prime, so I know I don't have anything else left. So this is going to be equal to the square root of 81 times 7, square root of 81, square root of 7. Well, square root of 81 is 9, so this will be 9 square root 7. That's it. It does take a little bit of mental gymnastics with this. And as most things, the more you do, the easier it'll become. So, I'm going to give you a few moments here, and I want you to do D. See what you can come up with. Okay, so what do we got? Okay. Got an answer, Kaylee? Oh, okay. Ready already? Definitely not. So by looking at this one, what do we got for answers? 4 square root 4. Okay. The problem that we have with this one, first offhand, is this a square root? No, this is a fifth root. So if we had to do a root on that, we would end up having to use, we'd say fifth root, writing that out. But is there a number that when I multiply it together by itself 5 times equals 64? Well, the answer in this case turns out to be 2 again. We've talked about that one. Because 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 1, 2, 3, uh-oh. Times 2 is 32. Ooh, I got an extra 2 in there, don't I? However, that means I got 1, 2 left over, so that means I got 1, 2 left over in here. So this is going to be 2. Is it going to be square root? What root is this? Fifth. So this would be 5th root of 2. Okay. So there you go. We'll be due at the end of class tomorrow.